Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Devil's Den here in somewhat north central Florida. Today I am hitting you guys with another travel guide, or one of my famous everything you need to know guides. We're going to be talking about the famous Devil Dens here in Florida. Famous, but I think overlooked for a Florida trip. So we're going to dive into everything you need to know, but before we do that, I want to make sure that you guys subscribe to this YouTube channel and turn on that notification button if you are new here. And leave me a big like on this video if you're excited for Devil's Den and exploring Devil's Den. I do guides like this all the time on my channel, especially travel vlogs that we're doing right here, right now. So make sure that you subscribe for those and you don't miss out. And with that being said, let's jump into everything that you need to possibly know about Devil's Den here in Florida. So the way that these everything you need to know guides usually work is I break them up into sub-subjects. So we're gonna start off first of all by location. Where the heck is this Devil's Den place? The closest major city to here, or the closest two major cities to here, are Gainesville and Orlando. We're closer to the city of Gainesville, about 45 minutes out of it, and Orlando about an hour and a half. But the closest town to actual Devil's Den Spring is called Williston, Florida. And this place is really in the middle of nowhere. There's not much around. The area is a long drive away from the Miami area, the South Florida area. So if you're coming here on a trip to Florida and you're expecting to do the whole state, you might want to get this part out, whether you're visiting Tallahassee, Gainesville, or Orlando, and that kind of part of that trip. But besides here, there's also cities like Ocala that have other things like Silver Springs to offer you, and there's actual other springs in Gainesville and New Orlando as well. So there's a bunch of stuff to do in the immediate kind of 3-hour surrounding if you want to come and do a few trips here. And I wouldn't say that this place can take up a whole day of your itinerary. So location's sake, you might want to squeeze in some other places while you're here. Besides that, the actual location also doubles up as a campground and a scuba diving training center. What I'm sitting in front of right now is actually the scuba diving center. This is kind of where they do some of the training. But when you actually head into the Devil's Den itself, you'll see a bunch of scuba divers there. So I'm pretty sure you can do some courses here, learn how to get your PADI certificate, and then actually head out on the dive. And there's a lot to explore there. So location's sake, you can come do your scuba diving, you can do your snorkeling, and you can do your camping, and a bunch of other outdoor activities while you're here. So before we jump into some of the logistics of coming here, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of information, history about this place, what you need to know, especially for me, somebody who's interested in paleontology, archaeology, and kind of the old world. This has a lot of interesting facts because this place is prehistoric. It's dated to about 10,000 years ago, during the Pleistocene era. So this is the time where mammoths were walking around Florida, giant camels, giant sloths, giant bears. The actual formation is called a karst cavern, or if you're familiar with traveling in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, you'll see a lot of these things are called cenotes back there. And they're pretty much caves that dropped into the water, but are also spring-filled, so with like spring water. And the water is always this beautiful translucent blue, and most of the times when you go here, it's really clear. You can see a lot of fish and animals inside. In this one, you can actually see turtles and certain species of fish. This place is also a sinkhole that branches off into a bunch of different underwater caves that go underground, and they spread into a bunch of different springs and rivers that reach across this part of Florida. So it's very cool because if you know anything about Florida, Florida is a very close to the water level type state, so a lot of it is flat. There's not a lot of hills, but this area of Florida actually has some sort of hills and formations, and most of this is limestone formed underground. And if you know anything about limestone, it's really easy to cut through, especially for water over millions of years and thousands of years. So this place kind of has a bunch of winding rivers underground, so if you're looking to do some kind of adventurous scuba diving, this might be the place for you. Let's jump into the costs of Devil's Den. What is it going to cost you to come here? So some things you need to know about the prices. This place is not ridiculously cheap. I would say it is a kind of mildly expensive attraction. It's going to cost you about $5 to get in if you don't want to do any of the scuba diving or snorkeling, and you get yourself one of these little bands right here.
Walk-through only.
Walk-through only passes. And that means you can only walk through the immediate kind of area and look into the hole itself. And if you want to indulge in one of these scuba diving or snorkeling activities, you'll be getting yourself one of these passes, which is $15. Now, important to note about Devil's Den, you can't enter the actual cave part and see the inside of it from the inside of the actual cave without scuba diving or snorkeling. You have to be doing one of those activities. They will not let you in. So that means if you're not bringing your own gear, like I did with snorkeling mask and this, you have to rent out your snorkeling mask, your snorkel, and your fins, and you have to pay the $15 admission price. So it's not super cheap. It'll cost you about $30 in total if you want to jump on in there and do some snorkeling. Scuba diving, I would inquire when you get here, because scuba diving tends to be more expensive depending on your scuba diving level, whether you're a dive master or if you just have your PADI license. I would come here and check it out, but do not pass up on the opportunity to do that when you're here. Besides that, on the facility itself, there are restrooms, and I think there's a little snack shop inside where you can buy yourself some snacks. I'm assuming they're going to be overpriced because of the situation. And the immediate surrounding, there's not too many options for food, but you can drive to the closest town, which is Gainesville or Williston, and get yourself some grub while you're out there. Let's cover the food here. And it's gonna be a little strange one because we're talking about a spring. So what are your food options? This is pretty much all I'm going to say. We're going to keep the food options really brief. If you're coming here and you want to maybe take a lunch after or eat breakfast before or whatever, keep in mind that there are towns and cities here like Gainesville and the immediate surrounding that'll have really, really good food options just because they are college towns. And so you'll have a bunch of options for either high dining, low dining, kind of the middle ground if you want to keep it cheap or expensive. You'll have those options while you're out there, so keep those in mind. Those will be about 40 to 30 minutes away from you, depending on where you're coming from. And a little tip for you guys is come and get yourself a pub sub or a Publix sub sandwich. Publix is a grocery store chain here in Florida, and you'll be able to go anywhere, any Publix that has them. There'll be Publixes all over the immediate area because they're pretty much everywhere in Florida. So that's a little pro tip for you guys. If you want to keep it cheap, get yourself a Publix sandwich, pub sub. So let's talk about transportation next. How do you get here? Well, since this place is kind of in the middle of nowhere, I recommend, like I recommend with most of my Florida travel guides and Miami travel guides, is just get yourself a car if you can. If you can rent a car, or if your friend has a car, or someone has a car, just get yourself a car for the trips you do here in Florida, because a lot of stuff are really far and out of the reach. So get yourself a car so you can get here. But if you can't get a car, you can look into specific tour companies or shuttles that might be leaving from Orlando or Gainesville that might be doing day trips to come here, and they might drop you off in a big shuttle tour company, kind of a tour guide trip type situation if you want. Other than that, you can forget about getting here with public transportation because it's really in the middle of nowhere. You might be able to swing it by with an Uber, but that'll cost you a hefty price. So that's it for transportation. Let's also talk about accommodation. What are your options when you're coming to stay here? Ladies and gentlemen, your number one recommendation for Mr. Clad himself is going to be get yourself an Airbnb. And if you want to use an Airbnb, make sure you're checking out my link in the description so you get $40 off. If this is your first trip, you'll get yourself $40 off your first Airbnb. Just check out my link down below in the description. You can get yourself an Airbnb in Gainesville, in this area, Williston, in Ocala, in Orlando, wherever you want, so you can stay kind of close to here and make a day trip out of it. My recommendations are always Airbnb because you get to connect with the hosts, get yourself some cheap accommodation and a nice homey feeling. But other options would be to camp here because they have a specific camping ground right here on the spot. You can do primitive camping with tents, or you can do RV camping, or even if you want to sleep in like a van sort situation, you can do that as well. Some of the rates, just to give you an idea of how much it'll cost you. For tent camping, it's about $11, RV camping, $26, and you can do a weekly rate or a monthly rate. So if you want to stay here for quite a long time, you can do that as well. I don't know why you would want to though. All right, and for the first time ever on this Everything You Need to Know series, I'm gonna add a little bonus featurette for you. We're gonna jump into little bonus things because I don't really know where to shove all this information for you. So just as a heads up for you guys, there are other things to do in the immediate surrounding, like we mentioned before. One of the major spots that you might want to hit up is called Ichitucky Springs. This is also a type of spring formation, beautiful blue water just like this, and you can do a type of kayaking, rafting type situation there. Besides that, this place is open every single day. It's only closed Christmas Day, and you can actually do night dives here as well. So if you want to dive at night, if you're crazy enough to do that, you can definitely do that, make that happen. You just have to contact them beforehand. If you want some information will be down below in the description, but just Google it if you have questions. Alongside that, the water here, just so you know, is 72 degrees Fahrenheit year round. Because it is a spring, it's always warmed up by its same kind of aquifer situation. So it's always going to be 72 degrees. Maybe in the winter it might be a tad bit colder for you just because you're coming out of the outside, but the water temperature actually does not change. We can confirm that, right? And that's it, guys. Besides being a little bit strict on the rules here with not being able to enter if you're not swimming, which is totally understandable because the cave is pretty tight. It's a pretty tight fit. Going in there, it is very, very fun. We actually just came out. It's super refreshing. It's super nice. The water is nice and cold, especially on a hot day here in Florida, which is usually always hot. It's really nice to go in there and cool down. The water is a beautiful hue of blue, and you can see a bunch of fish. We actually saw some turtles. It is a really, really fun time. So I highly recommend checking out Devil's Den if you're coming. And this is only part one of our road trip across the United States of America. We're starting here. This is super exciting. So if you are new here, make sure you subscribe because you're gonna get a bunch of these videos all across the United States. We're heading out west for a month. It's gonna be great. Turn on those notification buttons as well so you don't miss any of these new videos. And make sure you leave me a giant like, a dinosaur-sized like, and comment down below a place that you might recommend, or if anything that I missed out here in Devil's Den, anything that you have as recommendations for this area, leave them down in the comments down below. If you have any questions, I will do my best to answer them. And we will see you guys in the next time. I love you long time, Clads, and a goodbye.